Welcome, dear students, to this class on History of English Literature. In the previous session, we have seen neoclassical literature, the Restoration Age, the Age of Enlightenment, and Age of Johnson. In today's class, we'll discuss another probable question for your university exam, that is, the evolution and growth of periodical essays. So, you can learn this topic as a short answer periodical essays during this age. In the beginning of 18th century, periodical essays began to appear in literary magazines and periodicals, which were published at regular intervals during 18th century. Its aim was social reformation and conformed to neoclassical ideal which placed a premium on its duty to inform the mind and delight the heart of the reading public. So these are the two main functions of these periodical essays. One is to inform and then to delight the reading public. Periodical essays reflect the social, political, and literary picture of the 18th century. Though the exact date and year of the beginning of these periodical essays cannot be traced, it is generally assumed that the first periodical essays appeared in 1709 in Richard Steele's periodical Tatler. Sir Richard Steele and Joseph Addison are supposed to be the pioneers of the periodical essays. Richard Steele started the magazine Tatler in 1709. You have to remember these names for one mark questions. Sometimes you will get such questions. Tatler, about Rambler, about Spectator. So this Tatler came out in the year 1709 with the aim of exposing the false and the corrupt manners of the contemporary society. And it was followed by Spectator in 1711. Addison also contributed to this magazine. These periodicals enable the ordinary and common man to read and discuss any topic ranging from philosophy to fashion. It is often said that the periodical essayists brought the philosophy out of the closets and libraries, schools, and colleges to the streets of London, to the common people. We have periodicals like the Tatler, Spectators, the Rambler, Guardian. The review was used as official periodical of the government during that time, published political essays defending current governmental policy by many writers, including Daniel Defoe. And another one, The Examiner. It secured contributions from Jonathan Swift. Periodical writers like Defoe and Swift did not confine themselves to straightforward discursive writings but experimented deftly with satires. So, I'll make one point clear here because when you learn this neoclassical literature, just you have to focus on the satires during this time, the satiric prose pieces of this time, especially Defoe and Jonathan Swift. Both these writers made sometimes mischievous use of anonymity that was conventional at the time. Another very important topic that you need to understand is the rise of coffee houses. Middle class leadership of England, being largely Puritan, showed a distinct preference for factual writing over fiction. So remember, this was the age after the Puritan era. So the Puritan mindset is still prevalent. A remarkable proliferation of journalistic writing in response to prevalent Puritan taste was popular. Joseph Addison and his friend Richard Steele ushered in this new age of journalism in the 18th century, as I have told you, in their papers, the Tatler, Spectator, and the Guardian. The avalanche of political writing whetted the contemporary appetite of reading matter, fueling the other great new genre of the 18th century prose, that is periodical essays. So the wording for your exam may differ. Maybe it is about Tatler or about Spectator, or it's a general question on periodical essays or periodical journalism. So you have to summarize, you have to give an account of the rise of periodical essays, the chief periodicals of that age, Tatler, Spectator, Guardian, the writers of that age. The Tatler was a periodical originally started by Richard Steele and later on joined by Joseph Addison. The purpose of this periodical was to expose the false arts of life, to pull off the disguise of cunning, vanity, and affectation, and to recommend a general simplicity in dress, in discourse, and in behavior. In this periodical, Richard Steele adopted the name of the character of Isaac Bickerstaff, and this name was borrowed from Jonathan Swift. For 1 mark questions, please remember this. In the first issue of this periodical, it was made clear that the Tatler was to include accounts of gallantry, pleasure, and entertainment under the article of White's Chocolate House, poetry under that of Will's House, foreign and domestic news from St. James Coffee House, learning from the Grecian. So, when you come to this lesson on coffee houses, rise and fall of coffee houses, you will be familiarized with these terms: coffee houses, Will's Coffee House, Grecian Coffee House, and so on. That is also another important short answer question: the impact of coffee houses. The Tatler also included letters, stories, reviews of recent plays, and publications, and spoof advertisement along with the real ones. The Tatler had a satiric and moral tone, attacking the evils of dueling and gambling, and it also discussed the matters of good manners of the time. The Tatler was republished in book form and was popular for its light satiric tone. In this joint venture, Joseph Addison also contributed his essays. Jonathan Swift's some poems appeared in the Tatler. Alexander Pope also borrowed some material on fashions for his famous Rape of the Lock from Tatler. So these are all impact of Tatler on other writers. Out of Tatler essays, Addison contributed around 42 essays. 36 others are written jointly with Steele, while at least 180 are the works of Steele himself. Richard Steele's Tatler appeared 3 times a week. Many more periodicals, magazines tried to ape this periodical. Richard Steele founded a periodical called Guardian in 1713. Joseph Addison, George Berkeley all contributed to this journal. The Guardian was this. It was opposed by Examiner, another journal. Almost all the great figures contributed to these periodicals. Later on, other periodicals like Female Tatler, The Englishman, Whisper, and others came out. These periodicals offered to literary aspirants an outlet for self expression and brought out to the full of their talent. The greatest and the best figures of periodical essays are Joseph Addison and Richard Steele. Jonathan Swift also contributed some of the finest essays like A Meditation Upon a Broomstick and so on. The next important essay journal periodical is The Spectator, which succeeded the Tatler in the year 1711. It was produced jointly by Joseph Addison and Steele. After an interval for some time, it reappeared in 1714. It was revived by Joseph Addison and 80 numbers were added to it. This periodical appeared daily except on Sundays. It was closely connected with London and its coffee houses. Again, remember the impact of coffee houses. Joseph Addison in this periodical has artistically produced his famous Spectator Club with its popular members like Sir Roger de Coverley, who can be deemed as a representative of the Tory party, The Whig merchant Sir Andrew Freeport, Captain Sentry of the Army, and Will Honeycomb, a man about town. Mr. Spectator is a man of learning and likes to travel, and he also visits London as an observer. So, please study this also for short questions. That is Spectator Club. And the members, the imaginary members of the Spectator Club, who are representatives of the real life. This periodical was mainly dealt with the contemporary manners, morals, and literature. In this periodical, Addison's 19 essays became very famous, for they were literary papers on John Milton's Paradise Lost, and his 11 essays dealt with pleasures of imagination. The primary motto of this periodical was to enliven morality with wit and to temper wit with morality. The Spectator was written in satiric tone. The Tatler and the Spectator were the beginning of the modern essay. They are studies of human character, as exemplified in Sir Roger de Coverley, are the preparation for the modern novel. So you can find the beginnings of novel, imaginary characters in these essays. Out of Tatler essays, Addison contributed 42 and 36 others are written jointly with Steele, while at least 180 are the works of Steele alone. The Guardian, which was launched as a successor to the Spectator in 1713 by Steele. Early editions edited by Steele, since Addison being busy with his own famous play Cato, it was Steele who was in charge of this periodical Guardian. Addison took over editorial responsibility from July 1713 while Steele was campaigning for his seat to the Parliament. As a big believer in virtue, Addison wanted to ensure that the Guardian only told the truth. Besides two friends, other contributors were Ambrose Phillips, Alexander Pope, and so on. Addison's splendid innovation to generate some good public response for the new paper, encouraging readers to drop stories, comments, columns, letter to the editor in lines head post box. We find the beginning of journalism here. Now, the very important periodical is the Rambler. The Rambler was a twice weekly periodical which was started by Dr. Samuel Johnson. Please remember these names for short answers or for 2-mark questions, even for 1-mark questions. Sometimes you will get these questions. So please study this, familiarize these names. It comprised of 208 papers, but it was published from 1750 to 1752. Thus, Rambler was popular. The essays deal with a variety of subjects like ethics, crime, marriage, and so on. They include character studies, allegories, Eastern fables, literary criticism, especially on John Milton. The work opens with a prayer by Johnson, which indicates moral seriousness of his enterprise. A fine account of the inception and the writing of the papers is given in James Boswell's Life of Samuel Johnson. That is his biography, written by James Boswell. Minor contributions came from Samuel Richardson, Elizabeth Carter, Hester Capper, and Catherine Tabor. In spite of the initial protest against its solemn tone, the Rambler was pirated and imitated and went through 10 numbered reprinting in Johnson's lifetime. Oliver Goldsmith started his literary career as a periodical essayist with his contribution to his periodical The Bee, which appeared in 1759. He also contributed to many periodicals such as Busybody, The Critical Review, and The Ladies' Magazine. He also worked for Tobias Smollett's British Magazine. Thus, the periodicals gave a chance to many literary writers to give expression to their talent. The emergence of periodical essay can be attributed to various factors. One of the most important cause of the popularity of periodical essays is the rise of the reading public, spread of education, growth in the number of educated women, and the rise of two political parties, Whig and Tory, that needed their political mouthpieces. And another very important thing, that is the rise of coffee houses as centers of social, political, and literary life helped for the development of the periodical essays. So it was in these coffee houses they used to read these the reading public came to read these periodicals. The periodical essay was a popular form of literature and communication and recreation in the 18th century because it was the mirror of the Augustan age in England. That is very important because it's actually a it's a reflection of the society of that time. The periodical essays gave the new patrons pleasure as well as instruction. It was delicate and sensitive synthesis of literature and journalism.